dark world remember to be the light. Welcome to Black Swan Revelations. Here is your host, the Black Swan himself, Shane.
Welcome. How's everyone doing today? How you guys doing today? This is me, Shane, the Black Swan, and today I have a special guest, and it's going to be fun. We're going to have fun today, so make sure you subscribe to this channel, like, share, all this kind of stuff. Yesterday, I did a video on my theory as to what's going on with the drones. I shared it with Josh. Josh and I had a great time yesterday talking about all kinds of stuff, talking about holograms, Nephilim, fallen angels, conspiracies, all this kind of stuff related to these drones. That it just seems like the government is just like, it's almost like this is new technology that they've never seen this before. It's like, what is this stuff? So I thought, you know what, why not get another person's perspective, since this is all fresh on our minds. I thought I would ask Pete Garcia to come on my channel, and he was gracious enough to take time out of his schedule to jump on this channel. And we're just going to have basically a one-on-one and talk about what's going on in America, crazy America. There's always something going on in America. So without any further ado, let's welcome everybody. Just clap your hands. Let's bring Pete Garcia to the show. There we go.
Hey,
How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's good to see you again. It's good to be back on with you. It's been a while.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you coming on the show. So, you know, I don't know if you noticed, but there's some stuff going on in the U.S. over the skies over the past week or so, and I thought perhaps I would just ask for your humble opinion, because you're a little bit closer to it than I am, way up here in Alberta. What are your thoughts on what's going on here?
Well, it's not a black and white topic. I mean, it's not going to be a simplistic answer as people want. It's easy to say it's aliens or it's the government or it's whatever. I think it's kind of a lot of different things. And I want to take people through this, and I don't want to confuse anybody. So I'm gonna start very broad and then kind of go into more specifics, if that's okay with you.
It's perfect.
And if I get to anything and you need to cut in, just cut in. I mean, if you have a question, if I say something you don't understand or I'm
Okay.
talking about things you've never heard of, and I didn't get the chance to listen to your video yesterday.
Oh, we went nuts. We went
Or
nuts, man. We went on everything. We were showing hologram videos. My first video yesterday morning got banned from YouTube, and then we redid it again, tweaked our language a little bit, tweaked it a little, did it again last night, and we talked about time travel, everything, what's going on. We hit it all from just about every angle in like 2 hours and 15 minutes, and we were exhausted. So it'd be nice to just hear from your thoughts, see what you come up with.
yeah. Well, okay. So first and foremost, hello to everybody out there, all to the 310 tribe, everybody that's tuning in. Glad to have you here on a Sunday afternoon. I just telling you right before we started, I just finished, like within just a couple minutes, a Christmas article I was doing, talking about Daniel 2, the Old Testament, the birth of Christ, all that kind of stuff. So I've over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks, I've been collecting news, and I have like a Word document over here, and it's just all stuff I collect and just stuff I see and thoughts I write down at the time. And so that's when I look over this direction, that's why I'm looking over here. I'm looking at some of the stuff I put down, and it's 23 pages worth of notes. So it's a lot. Okay, so first and foremost, I want people to know that what we're seeing going on in the news today and what's being reported everywhere, it's not just one thing, and it's not even just one kind of thing. It's multiple things happening all at the same time. I will say that in a general broad perspective kind of thing, we have on one hand, we have these drone-like things that are appearing over numerous places. They started in New Jersey, but then now they're in the West Coast. They're Nevada, Texas. I think I saw some here over Dallas, Fort Worth, not a couple weeks ago. We live in the line of sight with where DFW, the major airport, lines up, and the planes fly and line up for landing. I guess it'd be landing, to the east, so 090, whatever the runway is there. And so we're used to seeing planes all the time, and we're used to seeing planes lining up to go into DFW. So these weren't those planes. These were very different, and they weren't moving. So that's why immediately, and this is right before, I guess maybe right as this story was beginning to break, I saw it, and I didn't really think too much about it. But looking back on it, I think, okay, those things could have been that, because there was a lot of other people in the DFW area that were reporting them. So I'm saying, okay, that's probably what I saw, because the pictures that people took from DFW, that looks exactly kind of what I saw. These things were in a line, but they weren't moving. They weren't satellites. They weren't Elon Musk. What are those, Starlinks? Or what? It wasn't those satellites. I've seen those, and I've seen planes and stuff. So it wasn't any of those things. These things were kind of just stationary lights. So on the one hand, you have the phenomena that we're seeing now that we're trying to make sense of, and then the other side of it, there's also these metallic spheres that are appearing at different places around the world, and they are exhibiting characteristics of flight that are their technology is not anything that we can match or mimic right now, as far as I know. That's not to say there's not some deep, dark, secret government projects that aren't tapping into some of this. But these things seem to be independent of the drones that are up in the air right now. So the metallic spheres are one thing on one side, and remind me, because I've got a good story about this to talk about this in a little bit. On the other
Yeah,
side, it's all over the news. Primarily what we've seen around in New Jersey is where it started to gain national and international prominence. So these are the two different things. So I think on one hand, you have true UFO or UAP type of things that are in the air. And then the other side, there's stuff that it seems like it's the government is doing on the other. Now, with that said, I want to separate those two issues, because there are things flying around that I do not think are human. I don't think they're government related. I don't think they're connected to any particular government or any particular program. I think they are truly the fallen angels, um, creating confusion, deception, etc., like that. Maybe they're trying to set the stage for what happens after the rapture. They're setting like a foundation, um, even some type of normalization or some type of desensitization of us seeing these things. Now, that said, okay, we'll deal with that in a little bit. But what we're seeing in terms of like these drone type things, um, that's where I want to kind of hone in on. Now, specifically with these, I'm going to call them drones. I know they're not necessarily drones. I'm just going to use that for the sake of having to keep clarifying everything.
mhm,
Um, but if we look at the drones and we look at it from the Hegelian dialectic, right? If we look at this, okay, why are these things here? Why are they happening right now the way they are? This is an equally fascinating process from where we started to how we got to where we are today. And if you will indulge me a few minutes, I'll kind of walk through this as quickly as I can.
for sure. Take
At-
your time.
Okay, so during World War II, we know that the Nazis had somehow come across UFO technology. Well, I don't know all the story, but they had the bell-shaped ship that they have that seems to hover. I don't know if it's uh, some type of electromagnetic technology, whatever. These things, these ships or whatever they were, can hover off the ground without using or exerting any kind of energy. They don't need a propulsion system to hover. They just can hover. Mechanical resonance, I don't know. It's what is it, acoustics or acoustitronics or whatever it's called, vibration of sounds and things. These things are able to levitate and to move at great speeds, and we've seen that throughout, since Roswell, the time of Roswell. These things have appeared and disappeared, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands sightings. People reporting these things are moving in ways that defy the laws of physics, right? So we know that at the end of World War II, the U.S. and the Allies won that war, and in the process of dismantling the Third Reich and taking over Germany, etc., we discovered that many of these Nazi scientists were way far advanced than we were in terms of like the V2 rocket technology and these other very highly secretive programs the Nazis had been working on. We brought them over. We brought over 1,600 Nazi scientists, and Werner von Braun being one of them, and the guy that really spearheaded our NASA program. But another 1,600 Nazi scientists came with him to the United States, and we did this all clandestinely, and we brought them in, I think, into I can't remember where they came into in the eastern part of the United States, but they ended up in.
Is that Operation Paperclip? Is that part of that whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but in Paperclip, a lot of those Nazi scientists ended up in Fort Bliss, Texas, which is in El Paso, and then they moved an hour north into Alamogordo, the White Sands area of New Mexico, and that's where a lot of where all of the testing that we had done and development for the atomic bomb under Oppenheimer and those guys. So a lot of that super secret squirrel stuff was done up in New Mexico, but those guys were resettled in Fort Bliss, Texas for a while, and then they were moved up to different places. But most people didn't know they were Nazi scientists. They had no idea. This stuff has been, declassified many years later. We found out that's what happened. So all that said is that since Roswell, I think there has been this. I think we have recovered technology at Roswell. I think we have recovered biologics at Roswell, and since that time, there's been a separate and very secretive program to advance that technology. Now, I'm going to run through some things here because I want people to understand kind of why the public is as confused as we are. And it begins really in 1953 with the Robertson trial. This was a CIA-led initiative. And you got to remember the CIA was very new at this time. I mean, the CIA had only been around for a few years. Before that, it was the was it OCS or OGA or some OGS or some the predecessor to like the CIA. But they're the ones that they were a wartime creation that were the ones that were responsible for Operation Paperclip and other things. But 1953, they said, "Hey, we things are happening that we can't really explain, and we don't think the public should know because we don't want to create mass panic." This is in the very beginning of the Cold War. The Berlin airlift had all taken place. All this stuff is going on. There's a lot of tension in the world still. So in 1954, President Eisenhower, through a presidential executive order, did executive order, 10501. This is 1954. And basically, what this established was the classification of information as it relates to national security. So he is the one that begins this process of classifying information. The problem with that is that it started out with good intentions, and like all things, it starts out with good intentions. But as we move forward in time, this executive order becomes abused and is becoming abused by these increasing number of intelligence agencies and organizations that begin to crop up. Now, Executive Order 10501, the exact wording. Let me give you the exact wording of it. It says, this is not the exact wording. This is more of a detailed narrative of it. Establish procedures for classifying and safeguarding official information related to the national security. This order creates guidelines for managing classified information, including restricting public access to data deemed sensitive to national defense. And while it was not specifically about UFOs, you can see how that this could be, the topic of UFOs could be easily dovetailed into it and fall under this umbrella of classification. So setting that as kind of a foundation for the confusion we have today, Executive Order 10501 in its intention is not a violation of Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution, which gives Congress the power of oversight over anything the government spends money on, which is why we have all these committees and subcommittees and all that other stuff. It's Congress's duty to be responsible for overseeing how the US government spends taxpayer money and what other parts of the government are doing in the name of the government. So that's where Congress has the power, and we call it the power of the purse strings. Um, but in reality, they're supposed to have oversight authority over anything the government does. Now, how this becomes abused is now that this classification process is in effect. Anything that say the CIA or the FBI or anybody else, the DIA, NSA, any other group wants to do, they can now hide behind this shield of Executive Order 10501 saying we can't talk about this in public hearing because it's classified. You and I have both watched congressional hearings, and that's one of the most repeated things that you hear, especially when it's on hot topic issues
Mhm.
relating to national security. We can't talk about this in an open hearing, a televised hearing. It has to be a closed door hearing, blah, blah, blah. And only certain members of Congress in the House and the Senate have the requisite number or the requisite level of security clearances in order to be able to even receive a briefing like that. Now, I've had in my military career, for most of my military career as an officer, I had a top secret SCI clearance, and that expired almost 2 years ago at this point. The point being is that I understand how classification works. I understand that it's necessary, and I also understand that it's been incredibly abused. It's probably been one of the most abused things the government has done in the last 70 years since its creation. So I understand the need for secrecy. I also understand that this has been greatly abused by many agencies and many different government levels for going back to 1954. So that said, um, I think there is automatically a conflict here that began in 1954 that has permeated for the next 70 years to where we are today, where neither the public nor even most of the elected officials really understand what a lot of these government agencies are doing. And there's probably only a handful of senators and maybe long-term congressmen that have been read into a lot of these projects. So when these guys come on the news, and especially like governors and mayors and state congressmen, et cetera, when they're speaking, saying, "Hey, we don't even know what these things are," they're probably being very honest because they don't know. They've not been read into these things. So I kind of take that with a grain of salt and realize that a lot of these guys are probably not read in on what's going on. That only adds to the confusion that the general public has because as a private citizen, I would think, okay, well, he's a congressman. He should know what's going on. He is the government, right? He is part of the government. The truth is that most of them don't know because they don't have the requisite number of clearances to be able to even receive the briefings of what's happening. So thus far, I've laid out two things. One, this non-human technology has been around for a while, and then number two, the U.S. in acquiring this has began to stratify the who can even know about this information, and that's only matriculated over the decades, the past 7 decades. So it's now just it's a hot mess. And so when Trump cabinet pick Kash Patel comes in and Tulsi Gabbard and Pete Hegseth and all these other guys that are looking to take a wrecking ball to the present system. There, a wrecking ball needs to happen. I mean, things are way out of control right now with the government, way out of control. This is not what our founders intended, and this is why the deep state is so incredibly terrified of what's coming January 20th. Use that as a backdrop for what we're going to talk about here coming up. That said, I wrote an article back in August or July or August. I can't remember which, called "The Last Election?" question mark. And I laid out some scenarios. I said, these are inflection points, right? The first inflection point is, will we have an election? Or actually, the first inflection point is, will Trump make it to an election? Second is, will we have an election? Third is, if Trump wins, um, are they going to let him take the presidency? And then, I guess another one would be that could even make it to the presidency. So that is kind of where I think we're in between number 3 and number 4 right now. We're past the election. He clearly won the popular vote. He won the electoral college vote. He has the mandate. He has the momentum, the wind at his sails, whatever, pushing him forward. And he's making these cabinet picks that are terrifying to the establishment. And just for a clarification, and so that I understand it myself better, we have two different kind of entities here that are human, that are at war with the incoming administration. On one hand, you have the swamp. We call it the swamp, but really that's this bureaucratic class in Washington, D.C., and throughout the federal administration that aren't elected. They're just in power forever until they decide to retire or quit, whatever, or some scandal takes them out. But very rarely does scandal reach these guys. Most people don't even know they exist. They're just always in Washington. They're always there, in and out of every administration, etc. You can think of some perfect examples of like Victoria Nuland, many of these senators that have been around way past I mean, they should have retired 20 years earlier, but they're still there. You've got people that are in every different agency. There's 17 or 18 different intelligence agencies right now in the United States, et cetera, et cetera. The most devastating thing that Obama did before he left, or during his 8 years in office, is that he seeded the government at every single level, state and federal, with people that are his acolytes, that are people that are aligned ideologically with him. This progressive ideology that we need to redo America, remake America, and bring us into the global fold of the, whatever the global government that's going to come about. There's the swamp. I look at the deep state more as a broader, more secretive type of body, and these are international. These are national, international. So when you think about a George Soros, Hamza, what is this, Bin Laden. He's not a deep state in that sense, but he represents that kind of power. He's the guy behind the scenes, behind the throne with the money and the plan and all that. He just doesn't want the limelight. He doesn't want anybody to know that he's there. Same thing with Soros. There's other people like this throughout that through their money and influence have created these umbrella networks, and they have hundreds and hundreds of organizations underneath them, and it's nearly impossible to root all of this out. So they are not specific to the United States, but they are deeply invested in preventing the incoming administration from ever taking control, taking power. So you have two different entities kind of at war. And the way I kind of looked at everything from 2020 till present, I would have looked at it this way. This is all in hindsight too, right? The Democrats in the machine were able to prevent Trump from taking office in 2020, and since then they've done everything they can to prevent him from ever running. So I think that's been collusion between, say, the swamp and the Democrat Party, in collusion with the media, et cetera, et cetera. They had 4 different criminal trials against him. They've had 2 different assassination attempts, both failed. On and on. We can look at all this, the media just day in and day out, really trying to crush Trump and anybody associated with Trump. They've thrown a number of his compatriots in prison for really minor things, for not appearing at a congressional hearing. The I don't even want to say the word, the sixth committee, the letter that comes after I six committee. That was designed to criminalize Trump and anybody associated with Trump so they could never run again. Well, all of that is in the past now. That's all stuff that's already happened, and he's in office. He's the presumptive nominee, or he is the, what do they call it? The incoming president. All
Yeah.
this stuff is already gone. So I think he is going to take, at least I think not the deep state, the swamp and the Democrats and the media, etc., have done everything they could up to this point to prevent him from doing it. Now I think it's in the hands of the deep state. And so this is where a lot of this, I think this drone stuff comes into play. Um, so there's a couple of prevailing theories right now. Um, One, why are they doing this? Why are these things appearing now in between the election and the inauguration? I think that's one of the key questions we would have to ask ourselves. Why now? And so I've heard a number of different theories on this. One is that these are very top secret programs being run by Skydio, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, any of those military industrial complex types. They've they've they're testing out all manner of new technology that are drones, but are not what we think of as drone. These are not hobbyist kind of drones. These have a military purpose, mission, etc. One of them being from the Navy, where they can do ship to shore, and these are fixed wing um, drones, but they can also um, transition to VTOL, or vertical takeoff and landing. So they have like a tilt rotor kind of aspect to them, like an Osprey. If you're familiar with an Osprey plane, where those things can either fly like a plane or they can fly like a helicopter. So I think some of these drones are like that. And there is a corridor between New Jersey and Delaware that some of these organizations have mapped out to be able to train on at night. So there's that one theory. There's another theory, and well, let me back up. The theory on the governments, or these private organizations who are being contracted by the government, um, are testing out a number of different things. There is, let's see, in terms of applications, there's the ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance mission. There is the AI navigation. They're using these things to beef up their AI navigation, so that these things can fly autonomously without a human in the mix at all. Even a human, there's not even a human controlling, sitting back there at some other place controlling these things. They're trying to get these things so they can fly themselves and can operate themselves. And we have this in other aspects of the military, they're called laws, lethal autonomous weapon systems. And so they're not just planes or whatever. They're trying to get this capability so that you don't have to have a human in the mix all the time, and a human that has to use the bathroom, has to sleep, has biases, etc. So they want to take all that out of there. They want a machine that does exactly what it's programmed to do. And I think there is a Revelation 13 aspect to this that we can talk about later. But um, there's that's kind of the second thing of like what they want these things to do. The third thing would be that these things are radiation sniffers, that they can detect things like dirty bombs, radiation hotspots, and whatever. There is not news. There is word that in the collapse of the Soviet Union back in 1991, as Ukraine broke away, somewhere around 80 different nuclear warheads went missing from Ukraine. And one of those, it's been reported, has made its way to the United States. So I don't know if that's true. That's just intelligence chatter out there. It could be disinformation, misinformation. I don't know, but it's something that we have to at least consider as a possibility, because that goes back to the question of why now. And if now the deep state is involved and they want to prevent a Trump presidency, it could be possibly that there is an attack somewhere between now and the 20th, or maybe even on the 20th, where they are trying to prevent him from actually taking office. And I certainly think that's a possibility. Now, the last aspect to these drones, is the counter drone technology. We know that Elon Musk tweeted out a while back, and he had a picture of an F-35 on there. He's like, "What idiot is still making these?" And the other picture was these drones, and there's like hundreds of drones all flying in formation together. Now, years ago, back in 2017, I was teaching was a postgraduate pre-command course for medevac officers that were positioned to take or were being positioned to take command of medevac companies in the United States Army on the active duty side. I used to teach a futures class back then, and in there I had a page of drones, not drones, but robotic drones, whatnot. And I had about 20 or 30 of these different kinds of robots that were already in existence back in 2017. And I'm talking about robots that could fly, crawl, walk, run, gallop, subterranean, underwater, things that flew, things that crawled walls, things that were the size of like insects, things that were, the size of large dogs, that were quadrupedal. You had robotic drones that were like shape or designed like centipedes and all manner of things. I mean, it's mind-boggling how many of these kinds of things are out there. And that was 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago. So who knows where we are now? And there's probably double the amount of companies that are private companies that are either contracted or subcontracted to create these things. Now, they would do that under the auspices of a group like DARPA. And a lot of people out there probably think of DARPA as like an organization that meets in a building and they have a, commanding officer, down the range, like a traditional military unit. That's not how DARPA is structured. DARPA is like very, in fact, most of everything that DARPA does is subcontracted out. It's a very loose organization in terms of like, there's not a physical building necessarily that they meet at and have meetings and whatnot. They're just an organization, and largely it's run through private companies that are contracted to develop technology. And like a quick example, back in 2009, I was in a Army department called the Directorate of Combat Doctrine and Development, the DCDD, and we would plan 10 to 20 years into the future. So back in 2009, the Black Hawk helicopter was already coming up on 30 years, being 30 years old. And they were looking for a suitable replacement that could replace the Black Hawk. 2009, mind you. And they said, okay, we want an aircraft that flies twice as fast, twice as far, and carries twice as much at half the price for what the traditional Black Hawk can do now. And this is given to private organizations or private companies like Bell Helicopter, Sikorsky, any number of contractors out there to develop. Here's the parameters. I want you to meet these parameters. And if you can meet these parameters, we will do an exclusive contract with you. And it's very lucrative for these companies. So they're all trying to develop this thing that could do this. And the only technology at the time that could do this for the mainstream government, mainstream military, etc., was the vertical takeoff and land, is that tilt rotor technology. So that's where most of that had went for the last, 15 or so years. I think they've come up with some other designs, the double rotors, etc., the double helix rotors, and then they have the push props and some other things going on. But all that to say is that this has been on people's minds for a long time and I think we're there. I think we're at that point now. And I think what this technology represents is kind of a transition, moving away from manned aircraft to more to unmanned aircraft because of the capabilities they present. And going back to what Musk said about the F-35, why would we spend this amount of money on this one jet when these little bitty drones the size of a bird can take it out simply by swarming it, and there isn't we don't have a good counter for drone attacks at this time, especially if it's in a swarm technology. And there was a movie that came out, I think it was in 2017 actually when it came out. It's called Slaughterbots, and it's the famous clip that most people have seen on YouTube. You could look it up, Slaughterbots clip, and it shows the guy on stage. He's giving like a TED Talk presentation, and he's got this little drone, and he throws it up in the air, and then the drone, through the camera of the drone, you're seeing that image on the screen behind the speaker, and it's flying around, and I think it comes back and it lands on his hand or something. And then he has a dummy that's there, and it's got like this target on his forehead. So this guy takes his drone, throws it, and then this thing is programmed to hit that mannequin. So it flies and just makes a beeline to the guy's forehead, and there's a little bitty shape charge inside of the front of that drone. As soon as it hits that mannequin, it explodes, and so it shows the impact through the person's brain. Multiply that by 100,000 drones, and you can see how devastating this would be against any enemy. And Britt Gillette has done a. If anybody wants more deep dives on swarm technology, I think Britt Gillette's probably the best guy to talk to, or read his books and stuff on swarm technology. But I think that's a very much where governments today are very, very terrified of the possibility. So this, what we're seeing in New Jersey and other things, this may be a response to that to try and prevent China, Russia, or whoever from gaining the technological or military advantage over us. With all that said, I'm looking at it from like the very human perspective and the very technology driven perspective. Let me look at it from another angle now too. And if you have anything, please jump in. I don't want to hog the
Yeah.
whole thing.
One of the thing, just one little tiny thing. Maybe this will spark something in you as well while you're talking. Yesterday, Josh and I were talking a little bit about holograms and all this kind of stuff, and mixing in real stuff. I talked about change blindness, like when you have too much information, you miss the very thing that's right in front of you. But one of the things that I did in the morning when my video got pulled down was I started talking about New Jersey and how important, because we had watched a video clip where Neil deGrasse Tyson had said, out of all the places on the planet, these drones show up in New Jersey. And why is New Jersey, like, why New Jersey? It's so boring. Like, you should pick where the pyramids are or something else. So then I did a deep dive on the history of New Jersey, and you come across people like Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Edison, and then Thomas Edison was also mentoring Nicholas Tesla as well. So there's the big wars with they call it like the current, not currency wars, but current wars, like AC/DC. They both had different viewpoints. But one of Tesla's inventions, the coil invention, like trying to basically harness energy a little bit better so that they could, like, he was really fascinated with time travel and all this kind of stuff. But when you mentioned governments, when Tesla died, they raided his home and took all his papers in regards to all of his inventions, including time travel. And we don't know what happened to that stuff. It's all became government property. And I don't know if you can tie this into some of that kind of idea, that thinking that makes sense, where governments, if you have something that affects the defense, positive or negative, they have the right to be able to confiscate that stuff for protection and protect. Like, you don't there's no way you can ever get that stuff back. It's kind of weird,
Yeah.
but it just goes really deep in New Jersey. Like, it's heavy with inventions, patents, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, let's see. New Jersey. I'm trying to think of I saw something. Yeah, so the New Jersey, you had the 4 locations, the Picatinny Arsenal, Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, Trenton, and then New York City were locations. And then if you look at the military bases, or the places within New Jersey, at least the northern half, you can see how there might be some truth to all of that being blended in here with regard to Tesla. Look, what year did Tesla die? Do you remember?
46, I think.
Right. So if he died in 46 and they came in and confiscated all of his stuff, which there's a 99.99% chance that some government entity has all that information and begin farming this out to various agencies over the years, or rediscovering Tesla stuff, the stuff that's,
Yeah.
you remember back in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and they took the
Yeah,
Ark at the end of the movie
exactly.
and they
Yep.
ends
Hid
up
it in
in a box in the, yeah,
Smithsonian.
some
There's probably
warehouse,
some
yeah,
truth
under
to
this.
that. There's probably some truth to that.
I think that they could have went into Tesla's apartment, taken all of his stuff, and not been able to really do anything with it because they were limited by the technology of their day. And this is something that they had to put off and wait until the technology caught up with the ability to recreate what Tesla was trying to do. And so I think this all kind of goes back in hand in glove with the creation of the CIA, how the FBI, the executive order beginning the classification process for classifying information and keeping that from the Congress and from the people, and as well as Roswell, the aircraft that was recovered there, any of the biologics. I think all of that stuff is certainly a possibility. And now we're at the time where the technology has, yeah, I
Mhm.
would say probably since the late 90s, the technology began to catch up with where what Tesla was talking about, and what others have been talking about over the last 100 years. And now we finally have the ability to um, begin to create some of this technology. And maybe they're just, uh, you know, taking these things out for joyrides now, like, hey, we finally figured out how to do this. And now they don't even care. They're
Exactly.
just like, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. Like,
that's why these things, they don't appear to be normal drones.
yeah. And maybe like, and you've probably, maybe perhaps you've hinted at this on your channel when we talk about pre-flood technology. I always wondered, like, let's just say you have all this stuff from before the flood technology, and let's just say Noah and his son stored some of the stuff in charts, maps, whatever they have, Papri, whatever they want to write all this stuff down, store it on the ark, and then when they land, the son's here's your technology. You each get a little piece of the pie, kind of thing, and off you go. You start building cities and civilization and all this stuff. If somebody were to grab that technology back then, pre-flood, perhaps they could look at it and go, according to our standards today, those look like drones. But what if they found information like in Iraq or wherever they're digging for this stuff that looks like drones 100 years ago, and they store it for a rainy day? And then as we get better technology, we're so used to drones now, and all these big drones that are going over New Jersey, who's to say that wasn't something that Elijah saw back in his dream, his vision, wheels and all kinds of, we would call them drones by today's standards. But how do we not know that some of that information was passed along and just hidden technology for a rainy day, for in the future? Tesla's onto something. They grab his paperwork, and now we got the engine now to make this stuff. This, like, Galileo was drawing helicopters, for crying out loud. He had no idea what he was drawing. He's figuring this stuff out. And what if they
Mhm.
just put that all onto a shelf, and then all of a sudden now we have these drones, like you said, that are there, and it's beyond our capability. Like, I can't go out and buy a drone that does what they do. I have to have a battery and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's just kind
Yeah.
of interesting that there's probably more under the hood that we don't know when it comes to pre-flood technology, ancient Egyptian technology, all this stuff that's very secretive. But it seems like the US government is hungry for it. And maybe that's a foreshadowing with when you watch science fiction movies like Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and all this. Maybe there's little seeds of truth in there that are just glorified.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I call it the tyranny of the present, but like, i- if we had, let's just say that we discovered, you and I, let's just say we're back in the 1940s and we're the ones that discovered the wrecked aircraft in Roswell, New Mexico. You and I at that time would have no way of recreating that or trying to make that thing fly. Well, we just don't have the technology. We don't have the know-how to do it.
Mhm.
But 70 years later, we might. So, the government at the time says, well, hey, well, let's just put this away for now. Same thing with the giants, the bones of the giants and all that stuff they've discovered all over North America and other parts of the world, where we bring it back to some secret building under the Smithsonian or, or wherever. and we didn't really know what to do with it. We just kind of held on to it for the time, thinking that, you know, I think it was 1951 or 52 that two scientists discovered the um, DNA. I can't say the whole deoxynuclear, I can't even, peptide, something, but
Yeah.
whatever DNA stands for, that long word, they discovered it, right? And so from that moment forward, you know, we've been, you know, but humanity has been actively trying to decode DNA and then and it was in the 90s when we figured out how to begin cloning things. And like Dolly the sheep, remember Dolly the sheep? The first, I think the
Yep.
first cloned animal that was public,
Yeah.
you know.
Mhm.
But certainly then we have things like um, CRISPR and all these other gene editing technologies now, to where it's not shocking to us now. But it's interesting, back in 20 or whatever, during Trump's first term, that, you know, that when Hillary Clinton's email thing got um, hijacked or whatever, or released to the public, and there was a question in there about the body of the Nephilim in Gilgamesh's tomb or whatever, Nimrod's
Mm.
tomb. You remember that on that email chain? I think that I think we're to that point now where we have the ability to pull those bones out of whatever place they've been hidden in, look at them under the microscope, be able to Jurassic Park them into some kind of a new thing. I think we're at that point now, technologically wise. I don't think that's a word, technologically,
Yeah. I
where
like
we
it though.
can
I like it.
where we can recreate things. I mean, they're talking about recreating the woolly mammoth, you know, and other animals that have been extinct forever. So I think we're kind of on that threshold, and it's. Do you remember the movie? It had Tom Cruise in it. The day after tomorrow. No,
Yeah.
it's where he keeps
Edge of
living the same
Tomorrow.
day over.
Yeah. Edge of
Yeah, Edge
Tomorrow,
of
I think,
Tomorrow,
or something. Yeah.
where those suits, those exoskeleton suits, we can make those things now.
Hmm.
The problem isn't making them. The problem is powering them, because they have such a huge battery requirement that walking around in those things for more than just a few minutes, they
Right.
die out so quickly. So it's the power and the weight of the batteries that would be required. Like, we just don't have the power to do those things yet, but we have the ability to make the suits. Same thing with like an Iron Man suit. We could make an Iron Man suit. We just don't have a way to power it that would
Yeah.
make it
Isn't
practical in use.
isn't it interesting that Iron Man mirrors Nicholas Tesla when he's making this little basically energy thing that activates the suit and runs all the power and all this kind of stuff. It's like I think about, like, if you go back to Joshua, Achan was grabbing Nimrod's invisible cloak or whatever and trying to hang on to it, and Joshua's trying to invade the Amalekites, and he's like, I can't figure out why we're being defeated. And God's like, somebody stole something. So then Joshua pulls Achan aside and says, you know what you did? Confess. And here this guy had stolen one of Nimrod's cloaks and was keeping it to himself for a later day. Maybe, maybe he was thinking on using that cloak down the road. And so if that happens back then, where people hoard stuff, what's to stop people from building things, but they don't know how to power it yet until they start digging deep into, like, Tesla's work, Edison, all these guys. And now they're like, oh, hey, look, we can now harness power, and now we can build these exosuits now today we can do it. Or maybe we're a year away, or maybe they've built them but they're not releasing them to the public, like with these drones. We've never seen this stuff, but we're comfortable with them because we've been playing around with drones all in the last 10 years, and now, I don't know, we're getting used to them. Now we're starting to get used to them, to a point where the government has to do something crazy and swing over, because that's the pattern of a black swan event. If you have something like a black swan, like this was, to me, this was unpredictable. I didn't think this was going to happen. You swing over to the other side, you overcompensate so much that you're going to have laws now that says that nobody has drones. Nobody's allowed to have anything. You can't leave your house until we clean up this mess above New Jersey. And they'll just start making new rules that make us get to the point where we can't leave our house now because there's drones out there, whether real Nephilim juice created, who knows what, but they're just, we can't go out of our homes. Like, it always seems to tie back to trying to control us somehow.
Yeah. So if you think back to what I mentioned earlier about the Roswell, the creation of the CIA, et cetera, you had something that most people are very familiar with by now, Project Blue Book, which began in 1952. It wasn't the first one. There was Project Grudge before that, and then Project Sign, basically. All of these were the military's attempt to uh, hoard the information that was gleaned from these off-world ships or whatever. And
Mhm.
then Project Blue Book, being the most famous and the longest lasting one, was basically the military's attempt to debunk anything UFO for the next 16, 17 years. I think it went from 52 to 69. So how many years that is? 17 years? Anyways, um, but but these days we're not having a Project Blue Book, but we are, like you just mentioned, we are having. There was a 2023 amendment that was proposed. Let me see. It's called. Let's see. I had the name earlier. I'm I'm chatting with John Holler and Mondo Gonzalez about all this stuff. Um, it was called. I had just wrote it down. The Safeguarding the Homeland from the Threats Posed by Unmanned Aircraft Systems of 2023, and that's S.1631. That never made it out of deliberation. And I think what they did with that is very similar to what they did with the Patriot Act. The one that's now being proposed this year is the Counter UAS Authority, Security, Safety, and Reauthorization Act of 2024. And if you remember, if you think back to, just like, I think it does exactly what you're saying. It's going to try and scare people and limit a lot of freedoms, especially when it comes to anything related to drones, um, so that they can absolutely control that. They recognize what a threat it is. So they're going to present this legislation, and it'll probably get passed depending on the level of hysteria, and before Trump comes into office.
Mhm.
But in this, there is, if you think back to the Patriot Act was
Mhm.
really the 1995 Homeland Omnibus Terror Bill, um, that Senator Joe Biden at the time, this was 94, 95, and I think Senator Daschle crafted. They tried to get it pushed through Congress they tried to do it right before the Oklahoma City bombings. It didn't pass because it was too draconian. And then they tried to do it right after the Oklahoma City bombing. It still didn't pass by a smaller margin. And it was basically put on the shelf, and they
Mhm.
didn't touch it. And it didn't see the light of day again until right after 9/11. So right after
Mhm.
9/11, John Ashcroft, who was the I can't remember what John Ashcroft did. I think he was Secretary of Defense or something to that effect. Took that bill, tweaked the names, tweaked the dates, and then presented it as the Patriot Act. And
Mhm.
in 30 days, it had passed both houses of Congress and was signed by law within 30 days by George W. Bush. So I think this may be the 2023 Act, may be that repackaged into this 2024 Act, updated for uh, whatever. It wouldn't have passed before because it was never deemed a threat. So why are we
Mhm.
wasting time passing legislation on something that doesn't exist? That's the threat that doesn't exist. And now there is a threat. And so now it seems like this thing is going to pass if they can get it done before Inauguration Day. But
Yeah.
there is, there is stuff that was passed even during Trump's first term, the Defense Production Act, the DPA Title III, and two of those initiatives was the Blue UAS program and then the Replicator program. And the Blue UAS program, it basically uh, is trying to drive all of this technology, whether it's drones, medical supplies, anything that's considered um, a vital strategic interest to the United States in terms of technology or capabilities to make that all made within the United States. And if you think back to the pandemic, um, you remember a lot of the masks that everybody was required to wear, like a lot of those weren't even made in the United States. We had to rely on other people. A lot of the medical supplies and stuff that we need that our nation is dependent upon is not made in the United States. It's being imported from China and other places. So we are
Yeah.
really at the mercy of other countries when we put our hands and when we put these, these um, vitally strategic supplies and things in the hands of potential adversaries. We're really kind of over the barrel in that aspect. So that's what DPA Title III was designed to do, was to push the creation and all this technology back into the United States. The replicator program was to deploy thousands of drones and get them into the service by 2025 for the warfighters to use. Certainly, when I was in Afghanistan, 2008, we were using drones at that time, and these were the Reapers, Predators, the big ones that fly at like 30, 40,000 feet, and they just collect data. They're up flying around for hours on end, and they fly back to whatever base they came out of. And a lot of the GPS technology that we had to use at that time was we were using our piggybacking off an old Soviet satellite that was geolocated over that particular location of the world. And we lost several drones because they would fly past this point of GPS tethering to the satellite, and they would go beyond, either because the winds pushed them, that further than they intended to go, or whatever the case is, and they would lose tether and they would just fly off until the wild blue yonder. We don't even know where they landed. Um, because once they lose that tether to that GPS, that we can't control them anymore. They're outside of our control, and those things would just fly until eventually they crash. I mean, they could have crashed into the Pacific. I have no idea, or China, or some other place. But I think a lot of these technologies have been piggybacked off of by China and other companies or countries that have. You remember the Iranians had downed a really high tech drone that we had during
Yep.
Obama's tenure, and I
Yeah. They
remember
start
that he was
taking it
trying to,
apart and re-engineering
yeah,
it. Yep.
yeah, reverse engineering that. So that's where a lot of their drone technology today is based off of what they're selling to the Russians to fight in Ukraine. So
Yep.
um, it's hard to say what exactly it is, but I just want folks to keep in mind that we're looking at kind of two different issues that are kind of blending together right now. You have what it seems to be a government program on one side, and then you have the actual UAP, UAS, or not UAP, AUP, UFO type of unexplainable things on the other side, and they're kind of all intermingling, and it's hard to keep them separate at this point of what's going on. So now, well, I've seen one. I'm sure there's more than one now, but folks that are beginning to look at these drones through like high resolution cameras that have infrared or night vision capabilities, etc. These things, like you mentioned earlier, it's kind of like that Ezekiel. What is it? Ezekiel chapter
Yeah.
1, the wheel with the
Yeah.
wheel.
Yeah.
And some of those, even I forget the guy's name on Redacted was showing the video clip from it, and um, it looks like that. I mean, it's crazy. These things are spinning spinning and spinning. So, and then there's other images of some of these things caught at altitude, and they don't even look like, they look kind of like floating lights or something. Like there's no way to discern what they look like, and or what their true shape is. And then on the other hand, there are some of these things that are taking off and flying at incredible speeds, and it's hard to separate these things out. I think they're kind of blending together now. So on one hand, I do think it's a deep, dark government project under the guise of, say, like, I think what we were made privy to a few months ago, the Immaculate Constellation. That's the overarching program, and then underneath it, you have all these other um, secretive, compartmentalized programs that they're not even talking to each other, so they have no way of knowing what everybody's doing at the same time. So there's that one aspect to it, and I think that technology is based either off of Tesla's stuff and guys like Tesla, or it's based off of Roswell, some of that recovered AUP stuff, or both. It could be a blending of all of that together. And we're just now to the point where we have the capabilities to actually maximize to use these things and test them and make them. We're trying to make them. I guess they're trying to rush ahead and make them operational.
Yeah.
To be, but kind of to dovetail off of that real fast, it would be interesting to keep an eye on the skies during inauguration day to see what type of AUP, UFO type of stuff are appearing in the skies at that point. If it does actually happen and we actually do have the inauguration and all that goes as planned,
Hmm.
what kind of things are happening around DC in the skies that are unexplainable. So I would be curious to see if that's actually possible.
Hmm.
Now, I mentioned earlier about the metallic spheres.
Yes.
Now, it's so hard to get um, um, verifiable information these days on pretty much anything because everything can be deep fake now. You can deep fake voices, images, videos. You have AI
Mm.
making video. I mean, it's incredibly hard now to decipher what's true and what's not true. So I'm on this aspect. I want to relay back to a story I mentioned at the beginning. A good friend of mine here, his name's Harv. He's 89 and he was a Marine pilot back in the day, in the 50s and 60s, and he was flying a Crusader jet. And now this Crusader was capable of doing Mach 1. And in this instance where he's flying, he's doing patrols off the San Clemente Island near the Catalina Islands off the coast of Southern California. And this is in the same vicinity where the Navy and the Marines have had a whole bunch of run-ins with UFO. And this is where that famous Tic Tac video is in that same vicinity. That's where this takes place. And I think that was back in 2004. But Harv was telling me a story about in 1961, he's in San Clemente, him and his wingmen, they take off, they're flying, they're doing patrols, and there's something that pops up on the radar. They're instructed to go check it out. They fly in that area, and he says it's like this metallic sphere was there flying along with them. And then it took off at a speed that he could only calculate at. He was trying to keep up with this sphere, and he looks down and he realizes he's already doing Mach 2. He's flying at like 14, a little over 1,400 miles per hour, and this thing takes off like they're parked, sitting still. And he said I could only estimate it was probably about 32,000 miles per hour. And he's at 1,400 miles per hour. This thing takes off like he's sitting in a parked car. And he said that happened in 1961. So this is before deep fakes. This is before all of that kind of stuff. These things have been around for a while, and I would venture to say they go back, you know, to the beginning. These things have been flying around. So when you look at the hieroglyphs in Egypt, where they seem to show like spaceships, and there's some other ancient scripts and writings and things back in India, where they also seem to indicate that there was machines that could fly. Um, I think that's true. I think that stuff existed at that time because these, Paul says that that Satan is the prince of the power of the air. I think these things inhabit the air above us, the skies above us, um, in a way that if we could see them, we would probably be horrified, at all the stuff flying around us.
Hmm.
I think this planet is probably, if you could look at it through spiritual eyes, it's probably, if you could look at it like if you were outside of Earth and you were looking at Earth from the outside and you could see the spiritual demonic activity, this Earth probably looks black and it's probably just swarming with all of this stuff, and we're getting bits and pieces popping through the reality, and these things are becoming increasingly brazen and showing themselves. So I think you also have to take that into consideration, that these things are also in play, and no doubt the the Luciferian forces that kind of are controlling the power struggles on the earth right now are probably giving information to certain leaders that are funding. These are the deep dark pockets and wallet books that fund all this stuff, that are trying to push us in a particular direction. So I think it's a blend of both things, actually. I think that there's super secret technologies that we have that is tapping into captured or recovered spacecraft from alien spacecraft. And then on the other side, I think there's also truly fallen angel technology that's being employed by these fallen angels that are bent on deception and bent on confusing us and scaring people into blindly giving up all authority to some type of global government. And so I think that's kind of like my bottom line. I think we're kind of seeing both things at play right now.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. When you think about, again, trying to hide technology, like I think about the USS Eldridge, like with tied in with the Philadelphia experiment, where they're trying to make their ships invisible. And we always think of, whenever you mention something like invisible, that you're actually making the device disappear. But that's kind of a one-dimensional thinking. Like all you'd have to do is create a frequency enough so that you can actually hide something behind it and you'd never see it. And maybe perhaps that's what's going on with the spiritual realm when one of the kings was about to be overwhelmed in Jerusalem. And I forget which prophet it was that basically said to the Lord, open up their eyes. And then all of a sudden they saw just legions of angels all around them. And that to me is like almost like a frequency adaptation, where it's almost like putting on some VR goggles and there you go. You can see everything that's around you. And then you take off those goggles and you don't notice anything. So there's something going on with these drones that are either mimicking future technology, pre-flood technology, um, something ancient that is now recurring again. But now we have the money behind it. We have the scientists, the energy, whatever it is, to the smarts, if you will, to start putting this stuff together. And it's confusing people because right away we're like, well, why don't you just shoot them down? Wow, there's no law that's in place that says you can shoot thus saith the government. If you see twinkling lights, you can shoot. Like there's nothing there in place because that's never happened before. Better believe the government is going to be working on that to change those rules so that, and this is so, it feels like we're just watching Independence Day, because in whenever you watch that movie, if you watch all the commercials and the news clips and everything, while the actors are talking about what's going on, they're hiding their position or their technology inside all our satellites. They're actually using our weapons against us, all this stuff. In the background, in the news footage on TV, you see all these Wranglers shooting into the air, and then there's a news caption saying, don't shoot the aliens. Like, don't, nobody, please, it's illegal to shoot. And I'm like, this is what could happen right now. People could just go out
Yeah.
and just start shooting at these things. Why not? If it comes over a farm, why wouldn't you take a chance and just say, you know what, you're over my area, you're 400 feet, I'm going to start blasting with my shotgun. What's stopping Americans from doing that? Other than
They're
jail
they're
time and all this, whatever, right? Minor stuff.
they're already doing it. I
Yeah.
don't know that I don't. There's already videos out of people trying to shoot these things down. So
Yeah. Are you telling me
that
criminals don't want to shoot anything like that?
well, it's when this thing first started to break, when the news first started to break, I found something incredibly troubling that we were hearing. One was that you would have, I think it was the governor of New Jersey or somebody that came out and said, or not him, it was yeah, it was him and it was somebody else, but we're saying we don't know what these things are, but they don't seem to pose a threat, which those two ideas greatly conflict with each other, because if you don't know what they are, you have no idea what their intentions are or what they're capable of doing. So the lack of non-panic from the government officials, from high up government officials, the fact that they are not panicked tells me that they have some inkling of understanding of what these things are and what their intentions are. On the other hand, the fact that they're telling us we don't know what that means. That's and especially like Admiral John Kirby, who's the Biden's Pentagon spokesman. He's saying, "Oh, these are nothing." Mayorkas is out there saying, "Oh, there's not anything. These are just weather balloons. Whatever." They're gaslighting us. That's the very definition of gaslighting us. These are not what these things that you're seeing are. You're not really seeing them, and people are like, "What? No, that's insane."
Mhm.
I mean, you've got elected officials, media, all sorts of people saying, "No, these things are real. Like people are really seeing them." So it is beyond. If you think back to the 1997 Phoenix lights, all those lights that appeared over Phoenix, Arizona.
Mhm.
Uh, Clearly, there was so many eyewitnesses to it they couldn't hide it. It was too big
Yeah.
to hide it. But
Yeah. And it was like
what
10,000
can you do at that
eyewitnesses or
point?
something. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and same thing in the 1950s when all those spaceships began flying over DC. There's too much evidence to deny that it happened. But at the same time, it's like today, these things, there's thousands of sightings and so forth, and then the government comes out and say, well, this is not, you're not really seeing anything. And so to me, that's the very definition of gaslighting, and that's what they're doing to us right now. So I don't know, I don't know what Trump will do once he comes in with these things, once he's read into what these things are. It seems very much that the Biden administration is very hell bent on getting us into some kind of World War III scenario before he even takes office. I think the most recent thing they've done is they've confiscated a bunch of money that was Russia's, and now are using that to give to Ukraine, which you mess with people's money, man, things get serious. And I'm talking like $20 billion. So yeah, Russia is very not happy with us right at this moment, on top of all the other things we've been doing. So I don't know. I just happen to think that um, we're in a very, very dangerous time right now. It's a very exciting time in terms of like the news is never ending. I mean, there's just stuff coming out
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single
If
day.
you're a Black Swan channel, this is an exciting time. I'm telling you, I've been waiting 2.5 years for black swans to show up every single day. And now I see flocks of them everywhere.
So, what happens when all of the swans are black?
Yeah, exactly. Where I think that's when you punch your ticket out of here and we end up getting raptured.
Yeah, yeah.
So it feels like.
So, well, I tell you what, kind of in the inverse, if all the swans are black that are coming out now, the one
Hmm.
white swan that comes out in the normal, calm, peaceful day, that's the day that's going to stand out. Like, whoa, what's going on? What's about to
Yep.
happen?
Yeah,
So,
that's true. That's funny.
let's talk about another aspect to this, and I think it kind of goes back to what you had talked. You mentioned earlier about talking about holograms and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
We know that the government has been involved in many weird things over the last 70 years, from psychological warfare, anything related to captured UFO technology and biologics, psionics, any other kind of fringe research. So let me just kind of put this out there. Each of these agencies have kind of their own end state, their own agenda that the beats that they march to. They may be going in the same direction, but they're looking at very specific things. So if you're in the FBI, your primary function is to protect the United States of America, within everything within its borders. If you're in the Central Intelligence Agency, then your focus is outwards, outside of America. You're not supposed to operate in American soil, and you're focused outward. How do you control or manage the rest of the world that's going crazy or doing whatever you don't want it to do? And that's why we get involved in flipping governments and sponsoring color revolutions and coup d'états and all this other junk that have been pretty disastrous over the last 100 so years. And one of the things that the CIA has been really heavily involved in, and they, from the 1950s forward, obviously most people have heard of like MK Ultra, Operation Mockingbird, um, MK Often, Stargate, all these other projects, but in particular the Stargate one where you have folks that purport to have psychic capabilities. You may have 100 people that purport to have some type of psychic capability, and out of that 100, maybe 5 really do have that capability. They really do have that ability, and so they take those 5, they begin building these programs. And so one of the ways they test people that claim to have psychic power, power capabilities or whatever, they would be put into, and this is listening to guys that have been through the program over and over, and this is just one example, but one of the most reputable ones and I can't remember the guy's name for the life of me, but he was saying that basically they would take you into a room, like a white room. There's nothing in there, a white table, white chair, and you'd sit down, no windows, no nothing. And they would come in with a sheet of paper, 2 sheets of paper, a blank one, and then one with like a grid on it, a lat long, 8-digit grid or 6-digit grids on both, or maybe 10-digit grids on the lat and the long, latitude and longitude. And they would give the guy the paper with just the lat long on there, and then the other piece of paper, they said, "Okay, I want you to draw what you see there." And the guy's never seen, all he has is the lat long. He doesn't have anything else to go off of. So he's using his psychic capability to draw out what he sees, and he can do it. I mean, 99% of the time they can draw it out perfectly. You know, you get the lat long for the pyramids, and the guy, he's only looking at that. He has no idea what the lat long is of the pyramids. He's sitting there drawing out the pyramids, or some random place out in the middle of the countryside where there might be a little wooden shack or something. He draws a wooden shack. So out of the 100 people, maybe 5 or 2 have real power or real capabilities. Now, you and I as Christians would know that these guys are tapping into some type of the spiritual demonic force that is allowing them to see beyond what they're supposed to be able to see. So we know that that absolutely happens too. Moses, when he went to Pharaoh, Pharaoh had his court magicians that were able to mimic a lot of what Moses' um, demonstrations of power were, throwing the staff down, etc., and turning into a snake, turning the river to blood, etc. We know that that happens, and that happens because as humans, we're amphibious, I guess, in a way, like we're half flesh, half spirit, you know, what C.S. Lewis kind of pointed out. And so we have the ability to both operate in the physical domain as well as in some limited capabilities into the spiritual domain. Now, as born again believers, we have access to to God, the creator of the universe. We can go boldly before the throne, make our petitions known to our Abba Father, and he works everything out according to his will perfectly. On the dark side of things, I think that these things can, or these people can tap into these things. They may not understand that they're tapping into demonic entities, just in the same way that when you listen to or watch a ghost hunter show or something, and they're talking about, are you the spirit of the girl that died in 1842? And they're all thinking that. We know as Christians, like, dude, you're talking to a demon, man. These things are, I don't care what they pretend to be like, they're demons. Now, I am of the mind that demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim that died during the flood and in the times past, because the Nephilim being the hybrid offspring of both fallen angels and human women. So these things are neither fully human, nor are they fully human. They're not fully angel either, and there was no really place for them to go other than to wander the earth as these decrepit spirits. Now, the reason I think that there's a distinction between demons and fallen angels, and I may have mentioned this in the past too, but demons are always looking to possess things. They're always looking to find habitation in something. Whereas a fallen angel, just like a holy angel, can manifest physically. They don't need to possess anything. Satan didn't need to possess anybody. He did possess Judas in order to try to accomplish one particular thing. And he's only going to possess one other guy in the future, and that's the man Antichrist. But I would make the case that most of the fallen angels that are high-ranking, powers and spiritual forces in dark place, wicked forces in dark places, all that's talked about in Ephesians chapter 6. This hierarchy of demonic forces or fallen angel, they are they probably manifest in the flesh and operate within very high levels of governments and organizations. I would not be surprised that, well, first of all, I think a guy like George Soros is possessed by some probably legion of demons. But could he be working with guys that are not human either, and that he knows they're not human? Probably. And they're probably promising everything. Oh yeah, the minute you die, you're taken care of, man. We got you. They're offering everything to these guys.
Yeah.
And though, George Soros is an example of somebody that we would disagree with ideologically, but I think also the cases can be made for a guy like Elon Musk or Peter Thiel or others who seemingly have everything going for them in terms of technological breakthroughs, money, success, etc. And they may not even understand the forces working inside of them. They may not even know they have demonic entities either on them or in them, allowing things, shaping their reality as they go forward each day. Um, you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of things about Musk that I like that he's done that has been, in my opinion, for the betterment of American society in terms of free speech and etc. However, that's not to say that Satan cannot use these guys. I think, in fact, he can very well use them to accomplish. Because ultimately, Satan is focused on the end state. He's focused on the end game, where he needs two things to happen. He needs to get rid of the Jewish people. He needs to eradicate them from existing, so that they cannot call on the name of the Lord to invoke Christ to return, thus postponing Satan's appointment with the lake of fire indefinitely, if he could have any say in the matter.
Yeah.
And then I forgot my second point. The first, so he's focused on eradicating the Jewish people, and he's also focused on nullifying or um, neutering the church in this present age the best that he can. And I think if you look around the world, Satan has been very effective at muzzling the church in most countries. I would even go so far as to say, obviously, in places like Iran, China, and others, but also I would think in places like Canada, Australia, UK, other places where these speech laws are just getting shredded, and basically you even think about something in the UK and you're getting thrown in prison.
Yeah.
Something that you would post here that would not even raise any kind of flag on Facebook or anywhere else would get you thrown in prison in the UK right now under Keir Starmer. So my point is that Satan and his angelic forces, Prince of Persia, Prince of Grecia, all those, there's probably princes for every country in the world. These demonic entities are these fallen angels. They are controlling the narrative and everywhere in the world except for the United States. And that's only because God is using us for a particular reason for this particular time and place. And I think that's to expedite things with regard to Israel, the annexation of the or what they call the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and the rebuilding of a third temple. I think under Trump, he is under if Harris had won, I think we would still be, pedal to the metal, floor in the gas pedal, and just racing off the one world government cliff. With Trump, even though he's got folks in there that I don't 100% trust or fully trust, like Musk and others, he's got his foot off the gas pedal. We're still going downhill, but now he's kind of tapping on the brakes. But on the other regard, I think he's flooring the pedal when it comes to things dealing with Israel and with Bible prophecy. So I think either way, we're racing forward. It's just how do we get there, and what purpose does it serve to keep the United States in the position that it is for as long as it can? I think is more from God's perspective than it is from Satan's perspective. And what I mean by that is, if Satan had his druthers, he would have had Harris in here. Trump would have never won the first time, and we would have been a global government back in 2016 under Hillary Clinton. Like that would have all happened. Like Charlie Oscar Victor 1 Delta would have happened back in 2016, 2017, and we would have long been under this totalitarian world governmental system. But because Trump's come in as a disruptor, God is using him as a disruptor. And that's to delay or postpone the ultimate arrival of the one world system we call the beast kingdom. And it's only because God wants to set it to a particular time. He's already got the time stamp when the rapture is going to happen, when the beast king, when the nation of Israel is going to sign this covenant with death with the Antichrist, or confirm a covenant with him that we see in Daniel 9:27. When all that stuff kind of starts to play out, God has already got those marks on the wall. And if you look at Revelation chapter 8 or 9, I believe, talking about the four angels bound under the river Euphrates, they were bound for a particular time, a day, month, and year, going back at least 2,000 years, but presumably from the beginning, when those things are going to be released. So if they've already got a date earmarked for them, everything else we have to do is going to have to conform to that pattern. It's going to have to conform to those benchmarks that are coming. So I think God is using Trump as this disruptor to delay the arrival of the beast kingdom, and that the rapture in and of itself, when it happens, it will so throw the world into chaos that because of that chaos is what is going to allow the Antichrist to rise up in the fashion that he does and take control in the way with the 10 kings and all that kind of stuff. All of that to play out the way that it's going to happen exactly as the Bible says it's going to happen. God is not going to allow Satan to thwart, change, tweak, or by any other means change the plan that's laid out in Scripture. Because if Satan can get rid of the nation of Israel, they can't call on the Messiah to come to save them, which means the second coming can't happen if the Jews aren't there to call them there. And then the church, he needs to continue to bring as many people to hell with him in the offset that he loses. And so he needs to silence us and muzzle us the best that he can, which is why you can go on YouTube, TikTok, Twitch, Snapchat. I mean, name a platform. You can go on there and talk about anything you want to talk about. But if you start mentioning Jesus Christ, salvation by grace through faith, through the shed blood of Christ, and you begin to go down that rabbit hole, you will quickly find yourself censored, deplatformed, demonetized, et cetera, thrown in jail. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing to me that these major corporations and companies will promote things like child mutilation in terms of gender reassignment and all that kind of stuff. But you can't stand outside of an abortion clinic quietly praying, not even saying anything, just praying for those women that are going in there to do that horrible process. So that's the state of the world we're in today, and I feel like we're right on the cusp. I mean, I feel really like we're there. I mean, there's not much further that has to happen, in my opinion. In fact, nothing really it could happen today. It could happen tomorrow. We simply don't know. And I can't be dogmatic on when I think it is. I tend to think it's kind of this 2025, but I could be wrong. It could be 2026, 2027, but I think we're close.
Yeah, I think so too. Like in regards to speeding things up and slowing things down, I think of Sodom and Gomorrah when the angels went to go and check it out. Abraham is interceding, saying, if you find 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, we've all heard this before, but there's something behind that. The idea that God will not destroy the righteous with the unrighteous. If you think that, it's contradictory in nature to how God works. He warns, he warns, he warns, he warns. And if you think about out of all the countries in the world, I think the US is leading the way, then Canada in regards to helping other countries. If an earthquake happens in another country, a tsunami happens, something goes on, there are organizations that will risk their lives, their money, and they will go right into that country. They don't care if they don't hate them. If they hate them, they won't go. You won't see that with Iran, China. They're not going to come to Quebec in a winter storm. They're just not going to send massive amounts of people to Canada. So I think once we get to that point where we stop giving to other organizations to help the poor, I think we're out of here. I think we're out of here because there's no need now for the U.S. to be moving forward God's plan to get people saved, because if you're wrapped in yourself, you're no good to God anymore. because you're not helping the poor. You're not sticking up for those that can't stick up for themselves. That's what the U.S. is built on. The idea of fighting for the little man. You can argue if that's happening today or not, but I think that's what's holding everything back right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm more of a time guy, or not time. I'm more of a patterns guy, I guess, in scripture, and the fact that, you know, we see from Adam to Abraham is 2,000 years, from Abraham to Christ's first coming is 2,000 years, and then
Mm-hmm.
from Christ's first coming to now his second coming would be, it seems like a pattern holds true, then he should be coming around the 2,000 year mark, somewhere in
Mm-hmm.
that window. And the fact that, Israel was in diaspora for nearly 2 days or 2,000 years. I think they were in diaspora for 1,878 years or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly, if you go back to the time of when Christ was cut off, when he was crucified, you remember that just prior to that, the crowds were chanting, "Let his blood be upon us and our children,"
Mm-hmm.
um, and trading Jesus for Barabbas, or trading Barabbas for Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I call them the cut off generation. I think they were cut off, and that during that whole time of diaspora,
Mm-hmm.
there was kind of a pause on God's prophetic dealings with the nation of Israel. So why 2,000 years? Why didn't all this stuff seem to take place around the year 1,000?
Mm-hmm.
Like why now?
Mm-hmm.
We're coming up on the 2,000th anniversary since Christ's death, burial, and resurrection. I
Yeah.
hold to a 33 AD death, burial, and resurrection. Some people hold to a 30 AD or 31 or 32. And I'm not,
Yeah.
super dogmatic on that. I have my reasons, but I feel like we're there, and
Yeah.
why it makes sense that it's going to happen now, and why it didn't happen in the year 1000, or it didn't happen in the year, whenever, 1500 or 500. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the Byzantine Empire, they thought they were the kingdom. They thought that the 6,000th year was coming up in the year 500 because of the fact they were using the Septuagint chronology, or the
Mm.
chronology as found in the Septuagint version of the Bible, the Old Testament, in Genesis 5 and Genesis 10. So they thought they were in the year coming up on the year 6,000, because they had creation back in the year 5,500 BC, whereas most traditional scholars today would look at creation somewhere between 37 and 4004, if you're like a James Ussher guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think Randy Nettles, who writes for my website quite a bit, and he does extensive work on this. I think his preferred date was 3968 or something to that effect. Like Adam was in the garden for like 33 years or something before the fall.
Mm.
So I don't know. I mean, it's really hard. It just seems like I'm looking at a lot of different patterns today, and things seem to be lining up very succinctly. And we are now at a time when, the technology finally matches up to what's described in Revelation,
Mm-hmm.
particularly Revelation 11 or Revelation 13, when it talks about, Revelation doesn't specifically talk about technologies, but it does talk about technological capabilities. The two witnesses that lie dead in the streets in Jerusalem, how the whole world can see their bodies all at the same time.
Yep.
Before the advent of satellite television, that was an impossibility, and especially now with smartphones and smart devices, where you can stream anything anywhere. Um, I mean, you're in Canada, I'm in Texas, so we're talking to people all over the world right now.
Yep.
So that simple fact means that we exist in a time when Revelation 11 could happen. Same thing with Revelation 13, with the mark of the beast and the forcing of everybody in the world to buy and sell according to, only if you have this mark. Well, prior to the advent of microchips and quantum dot tattoos and all that other stuff, that was an impossibility. It would have been a tattoo, like a traditional tattoo on your forehead or hand. And how could even if that were true, even if people had to have that tattoo, like a traditional tattoo on their head or forehead, how could I, if I'm ruling and reigning from Rome or Jerusalem or wherever the Antichrist is going to reign from, how could I control what somebody's doing in Argentina or in Alberta or in South Korea? You know what I mean? Like, there's the only way to really enforce that is to have some kind of mechanism attached to the mark that automatically tells and automatically signals that I'm doing something. Or if I don't have the mark, then it automatically shows that I'm trying to do something. Like it's spying on me, it's surveilling me, it's got some way to report me or to and then how could I enforce that if I don't have soldiers all over the world to enforce that, or police officers? Well, I don't need that now with drones. I don't need that. If you think about and I don't recommend this channel because I don't, not your channel. I don't recommend the show on Netflix. I used it as a
Yeah, let's be clear. Eh?
I use this show in 2017 as a kind of an eye opener for my students who were looking at drones and they're like, it's not real scary. So I played the Slaughterbot clip, and then I showed them the dogs, the robot
Mm,
dogs that
yeah.
Boston Electronics and DARPA and all them have created. And there's a show on Netflix called Black Mirror, and in Black Mirror season 5, I think episode 5 was a show called Metalhead, and it's
Mm,
about this post-apocalyptic Britain or United Kingdom, and these people are basically scavengers, and they happened upon a warehouse that they were looking for something. They don't tell you what they're looking for at the beginning, but they're going through the warehouse, and this warehouse had set up these robot dogs as guards, as they're not actively patrolling. They're just kind of in a standby mode until they're activated. So when they're activated, they spot motion, and then they stand up and they start moving around looking for whatever is causing the motion because there's nobody in there. And so these guys go in scavenging, and this dog it looks exactly like the metal dog, the robot dog from Boston Electronics. It looks exactly like it. In fact, it's the same dog. Um, and it has on its head a little bitty like thing that pops up, and it's a little bitty tube, and it shoots like a little shotgun spray at whoever it wants to shoot, right? And in that shotgun, the pellets are GPS tracking devices. So if you get hit with this, let's say call it birdshot, you're going to have this stuff embedded in your skin. It's got a GPS. This thing can track you wherever you go. And so this thing begins to hunt the survivors and kill them. And so that's how the Antichrist could enforce, like the teeth of iron that's mentioned in Daniel chapter 7, this ferocious beast. I tend to think that iron representing metal, representing this future technology in a way, is going to
yeah.
be able to enforce 100% adherence to the beast system without having to put boots on the ground in every single corner of the world. You can have these drones out there constantly monitoring, right? Let's just fast forward a few years. Let's say we're in the time of the tribulation. We didn't make the rapture. We're still here. We're still here. And if you have a mark on your forehead, you can walk outside, and this drone these drones that are constantly flying overhead are able to pick up your signal, say, "Yep, he's okay. He's okay. Wait, there's a biologic down there that doesn't have a mark. Let's follow this person." And you might be scurrying from rat hole to rat hole, trying to stay incognito and live in your bunker, eat your beanie weenies, and do whatever. And the minute you pop your head out of your hidey hole, this thing is going to spot you and then immediately begin to send things at you that are going to kill you. That's how the Antichrist is going to be able to wipe out a huge number of people that are opposed to his rise to power right off the bat.
Yeah.
Um, anyway, so that's we watched movies like what was that? The Rapture movies. Well, there was Left Behind, both the remake and the old one, and then there was this Thief in the Night.
Hmm.
Any movie that kind of deals with this subject, we
Hmm.
tend to think of the Antichrist forces as like these, stormtrooper guys. Their faces are covered with like a black mask, and they're marching around and
Yeah.
doing whatever. I don't think they're going to be human at all. I think these drones are going to be like, I mean, they're going to be being the ones doing the bulk of the surveillance, the reconnaissance,
Yeah.
intelligence gathering, enforcement, and
Yeah.
just like that Slaughterbot movie, go in and be able to take people out that aren't.
Yeah.
Now, it says beheading. Remember,
Hmm.
in Revelation 20, it talks about those people that are will rule and reign with Christ because they've been beheaded, and that's
Yeah.
where everybody thinks of either guillotines, or we think of
Collars or
Muslims who,
something that, yeah,
yeah, or the Muslims, how they like to cut people's heads off and stuff, like the Caliphate, ISIS, and Al Qaeda and all that.
yeah,
What if these things blow up and they blow your head off?
yeah,
And they
exactly.
behead you that way, or
Yeah,
behead you that way by just simply
yeah.
taking your head off.
It's horrible, but
Um,
there's movies about that stuff all the time. Prisoners, you put these ankle bracelets or neck bracelets around you, and if you go past a certain barrier, boom, you're done. Like I think it was even, oh, what was the show? With I think with Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that, but maybe I'm wrong. But there's been tons of movies about that. That I think what people get wrong is you have to have 100% compliance to manipulate a society or control a society. You don't. You need less than 20% to control a society. Just grab all the leaders, take them out, and then work on the next wave of guys, and then just say, hey, what we did to the leaders we'll do to you unless you comply. All of a sudden you have less than 20% influencing the mass, looking over your shoulder, looking into your yard. We already saw that from COVID. People were driving around at Christmas time counting people in their living room. I did it for fun with my daughters. I must admit, I threw all my kids in the car and we're like, let's go see who's illegal at Christmas time. And we drove around and we're laughing. We're like, oh, that family's having two families over for supper. They're illegal. And then we go to another house. Look, their lights are on. They must be having Christmas dinner. But that's in your kitchen. And our mayor was actually encouraging people to do that. We were doing it in fun. But our mayor was saying, hey, be a good civilian and turn in your neighbor and count them and make sure if anybody has more than one family for dinner, I need you to report that and tell on them, rat them out. And it wasn't the majority of people. It was a small fringe of people that just have to give you that dirty look. And all of a sudden you start lining up all of a sudden. They just give you this little, are you serious? You're wearing that mask or you're not wearing a mask? I thought that was a C416881-4 mask. Why aren't you wearing that mask? Why are you wearing an ordinary mask? Like, it's insane. We did it to ourselves. We turned on our own. The government didn't need to do anything. They just grabbed a couple of guys, slapped them around a little bit, put a lock on one or two churches, and all of a sudden everybody's like, hey, don't be like the crazy churches. And everything shut down. We all complied. Easy. Within 1 year. Done. Crazy. That was a test run.
Well, in Texas, we complied for the initial 3 weeks or whatever it was. After that, we were like, yeah, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
We're like,
You
yeah, we're not.
guys have a different way of doing things. You just say, I dare you to come to our house and pay a visit. Whereas we're like, we're sorry. We'll try better the next time. We're sorry. So dumb.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think about Trump's trolling of Trudeau and calling him the
I
governor of the
hate it.
51st state?
I hate it. I just feel like we're just being bullied like crazy. Like I like Trump and everything, but that was a little bit, it felt like to me, like I don't like getting slapped around like that. I'm like, you're trying to bully us around. And then there are other people saying, yeah, I think we could be the 51st state. That seems to make sense to me. And I'm like, dude, you're selling our country right away just by one meme. You're giving up. Don't forget, we're like 1-0 when it comes to taking out the White House. We're 1-0. We're the only country in the world to be able to do this. So you guys got to watch. We have a huge Navy. We have one Navy ship at West Edmonton Mall. Granted, it's only a 2-man sub. That's it. That's all we have right now. But those guys, I'm telling you, watch out.
The who's the guy? Polave? How do you say it?
Yeah, he's good. He's pretty good. I like him. He's pretty sharp.
Yeah,
Pierre
you guys need to
Polyev.
get him in. Yeah, y'all need to get
I
him
think so.
into power. Hey, I have a couple of folks that are asking questions. I don't know if you want to take any questions right now.
For sure. Yeah, let's do that. And then we can kind of wrap this up with a nice little bow. Let's see here. Here's one. This is not really a question, but because the person donated, thank you, Andrew, for donating. Have you all heard of Tim Alberino? I've heard of him. I like his stuff. I like how he moves and all this stuff. Whether you believe everything he talks about, that's another thing. But I like how he moves on his channel. He's very intellectual. I like that. The world truly isn't ready to know what's really going on and what's to come. Hey, how you doing, pal? How's it going?
Status.
When are you gonna take over your dad's channel?
When I become old enough to.
All right, awesome.
In the kingdom.
That's funny. Here's Feathers. Thank you, Feathers, for that great channel name. Feathers. Okay, questions.
You know,
What do you
I know
see?
Tim Alberino. I don't know him personally, but I like a lot of his work. I don't think he's pre-trib. I don't even know where he is on that anymore. Like I have no idea where he's kind of moved away from eschatology and that.
Yeah, he's very, what is it, anti-Belovian, or what do you call that, where he's all pre-flood? Everything is pre-flood. He loves that stuff.
Yeah.
He just loves living in that. And I'm telling you, some of the stuff that he talks about blows my mind because I can't prove it one way or the other. I just listen, right? But where he is in Christ and stuff, is he a Christian? I think he's a Christian. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Is he not? Maybe he's not. I don't know. He talks a lot about Christ.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's a Christian, but maybe not so much on pre-trib, maybe more wrath of God destroying the bride of Christ, that kind of mentality. I don't know. I'd have to look him up a little bit more. But when he talks about the pre-flood stuff, the technology that they had, all these, like, he's traveled all over the world. For me, I'm like, I'm all in. Like, I'm all ears listening to Tim break apart all these 100-ton what do they call it? Cyclonic designs and all this crazy stuff. Like, it's fascinating to me.
Cyclopic.
Yeah, cyclopic. That's it.
Here's a question from Mr. Vax 2. Is there more the church can do to get more last minute people saved? What do you think?
It's a good question. I think we have to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves by having a devotion. I know it sounds basic, but if you could take care of this part behind closed doors when nobody's looking, you will pay attention more to the Holy Spirit, so that when you go out there, the Holy Spirit can direct you, because really it's the Holy Spirit that can save people. It's not me. But I need to be aware of the timing of it. When I bump into somebody at a gas station, that I would say the right word that would put a seed in that person, and then the next person could witness to that person, or maybe they planted a seed, and then today I say something that all of a sudden caused them to ask me a question, or they come to church, or they come to a Bible study, and you present the gospel to them. I think maybe starting a channel like this on YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, wherever, and you just start preaching the gospel. I think this is probably one of the quickest ways, honestly. You get like almost 1 million views on this channel. You're starting to do some damage in the kingdom.
Yeah, I think it was Spurgeon. I don't know if it was, I think it was Spurgeon that said that when I die, I want all like the demons in hell to rejoice that I'm out of the fight.
Exactly.
So I think that's okay.
Exactly.
I don't disagree. I think you're right. I think it starts with each of us individually having sound doctrine, having a good devotion life, prayer life, putting these things into practice in our own households, which is hard. Prophet is without honor in his own town, right?
Yeah.
And I think too that a lot of folks have been doing this for the last, I don't know, since I started my channel. I was talking about I did my article called "The Rules for the Remnant," and I said, hey, print it out. It's one page. It gives you basically the whole outline of Revelation, gives you the synopsis, what's going on. So if somebody finds it inside of I'm writing a book, or I've pretty much finished a book now called Blink, and it's a documentary. The folks are inside of the kingdom age, so they're in the millennial kingdom at this point, and this guy's going around interviewing people that were tribulation saints that had survived the tribulation and now are in the tribulation, or in the kingdom, in their semi-mortal bodies, I guess. and he's going around doing like a documentary style, asking them, "Hey, tell me about where were you when the rapture happened? Give
Mm,
me your story," right? So it's like that, and one of the things that I find, even writing a fictional story like that, is thinking through the processes of what it's like to be in the kingdom age, and there are gonna be people that are born inside the millennial kingdom,
mhm.
um, that will have no idea of the way the world used to be with Satan running everything. It will be as foreign to us or foreign to them as the antediluvian age is foreign to us. Like, we just can't imagine what it was like then because there
Mhm.
just isn't enough written about it. So a lot of that tends to fall into the realm of speculation because we simply don't know,
Or
and
life
we have to.
before cell phones. You
Yeah.
don't even have to go very far back.
Oh, yeah, my kids, they don't even know what it's like before, Netflix and streaming services and stuff. They just have no idea. They don't know
No.
the pain of having to wait for
Oh,
your favorite show to come on Thursday night at 8 p.m., and if you miss it,
oh
you gotta
my
wait
gosh.
for reruns. Who
Painful.
knows how when that's gonna be. So,
Yeah. Pain. They
alright.
don't know what kind of a painful childhood we had waiting for the reruns.
Yes. So, it's a very foreign world to them, and I think that, this is looking back, and this is gonna be done for the purposes of showing what the world was like before, so that the folks at the very end of the millennial kingdom who seemingly rise up in rebellion against Christ to be warned. It's like a warning to them, "Hey, don't do this. It's not gonna turn out well for you." Um, Another question is, nothing else to this is from Nothing Else to Lose. Rev 310, a lot of people are saying that Isaiah 17 was fulfilled in 770 AD. I think
Mhm.
Mark Hitchcock believes that, but I believe dual fulfillment in a tie to the harvest and a tie to the Psalm 83 and Ezekiel 38 war. I don't know, what are your thoughts on Damascus and Isaiah 17 and stuff?
Well, it's interesting when you go into the burdens, when you go into Ezekiel, Isaiah, all the stuff talking about stuff, it almost feels like there's a dualistic thing happening where, like you had mentioned, there's a prince of Persia and all these regions. Sometimes I wonder if those regions are getting attacked first, like Egypt, you're no longer going to be around. Damascus, you're no longer going to be around. Philistine, you're no longer going to be around. Gone, gone, gone. And then in the physical realm, that happens, whether earlier, later, whatever it is. But you got to take out the spiritual realm first, like the principalities, powers, rulers of the air. Otherwise, it just seems weird because now we're getting stuck into looking at what's going on with Damascus and going, there it is. That's in the
Mhm.
Bible. And then something else doesn't happen. Then we're like all confused. But maybe there's something there because there's hints of Egypt um, falling. And it's like, okay, what are all these cedar trees then in the Garden of Eden? Like in the same basically story, you're like, this doesn't feel like they're talking about a normal king on earth. All of a sudden, it feels like we're talking about fallen kingdoms from a spiritual realm.
Yeah. I agree. I think there's a dual fulfillment to Isaiah 17. I used to think it was purely future. I can see kind of where Mark's coming from in terms of that. I don't necessarily agree with it. It's only in the past. I think there's probably, given what we know about modern day Damascus, the Bashar Assad regime, etc., Saddam Hussein, it seems very likely that, given the fact that we've been exposed to the knowledge that even in places like Gaza, they've done this massive amount of tunneling under the subterranean part of Gaza, the Gaza Strip, all
Mhm.
of the subterranean infrastructure they built up in Lebanon by Hezbollah. It seems, to go without saying that Damascus has a significant amount of subterranean infrastructure. It it makes sense to me that Saddam Hussein, when we after the Gulf War, when we imposed the no-fly zone over Iraq, over the northern southern half of Iraq, that he would begin to offload a lot of his weapons of mass destruction to his compatriot and fellow Ba'athist. They're both from the
Mm,
same political party, Ba'athist Party,
right.
to Saddam or to Bashar's
Syria.
father, into Syria to
Hmm.
store for safekeeping. It could be that Bashar Assad also, and this is a theory I'm floating. I don't know if it's true or not, but that Bashar Assad could have rigged the city himself in the event that he needs to destroy it. He's got it so wired shut that he can pull out his phone and like hit a button, and then it's like boom, because it
Hmm.
doesn't say in Isaiah 17 who destroys Damascus.
No.
It just says it's taken away from being a city.
Hmm.
And Mark's argument is that it doesn't say it's taken away from being a city forever. I would argue differently
It says
that it is going to
desolate.
be
That
taken away. Yeah,
desolate gives you the imagery that you can't build on it anymore. Same thing with
yeah.
Lebanon in these areas where I think, or maybe it's Tyre and Sidon where they actually had fishing nets and all this stuff that just it invokes imagery that this city is not going to be the same anymore. Nineveh is not going to be the same anymore. Babylon, all these ancient cities or whatever, like it's all we could see that they're not quite the same as they used to be.
Yeah, and even like Babylon, you bring that up. I mean, Babylon was destroyed, but then nobody's really ever lived in it ever since. It's turned into kind of a historical site now.
Hmm.
Most of the infrastructure has been built 50 to 60 miles north of where Babylon traditionally sat. Now it's up in Baghdad and Fallujah and all the rest of that area up there. But nobody really
Hmm.
lives in traditional Babylon area anymore, which is why I don't think it's going to be. I guess I would disagree with Andy Woods on this point that I know he says Babylon means Babylon and it's going to be in the traditional place. I don't know. I
Well,
don't.
if you're
I
going
have a
with
hard
that,
time.
yeah, like
What's
if
that?
what's his name is going with that, then you'd have to say Sodom and Gomorrah or Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's not Israel because Israel was nicknamed Sodom and Gomorrah, especially Judah, I should say, was
Yeah.
nicknamed Sodom and Gomorrah quite a bit. So there is a play on words. Like I often think New York is Babylon, but that's just me because I'm a Canadian.
Because they put their A in the wrong place. Is that right?
Exactly. Kind of feels like if you read Habakkuk and you see Broadway
Yeah.
streets and you see chariots burning down Broadway and all this kind of stuff, I'm like, that's interesting with all these drones in New Jersey. Maybe there's something gonna happen on December 31st when you guys have your little countdown in the Big Apple and all this kind of I am going to be not watching with glee, but I'm always curious as to what happens in New York on December 31st. It's a big deal for you Americans. You love that almost more than Thanksgiving, December 31st. Like it feels like it's a big party. Let's go hard because next year we don't know what's going to happen. Celebrate, get Taylor Swift out on the stage, do all this crazy stuff, and then usher in the new year. I don't know if it's going to go quite like that this year. Don't know.
Yeah. And for me, Babylon can't be. Here's why I have a hard time with Babylon being in Iraq,
Mhm.
even in the traditional site of its ancient homeland. Revelation 18, verse 17.
Yeah,
For in one
Christ.
such great rich, for in one such great riches came to nothing. Every shipmaster, all who
Mm.
traveled by ship, sailors, and many as who trade on the sea, stood at a distance and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying,
There's
"What is
no
like this great
ocean in
city?"
Iraq. There's
There's no
no
ocean,
ocean
man.
anywhere. No. Doesn't it
Nowhere
also
even.
hint? Doesn't it also hint at the idea that it's the city where Christ died, Babylon, in that verse? Like right in the verse that you're
Um,
reading, it's where the what does it say? Somewhere where basically like it's the whole prophecy on Babylon and all this. Like I always looked at that as a little bit more spiritual kind of thing.
yeah,
Where
yeah.
the apostles got killed, the prophets got killed, and also the anointed one. And I'm like, well, there's only a few cities that you could say that happened. Most likely Jerusalem.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, it seems like that's where Satan's focus is on trying to control and he doesn't need to control Babylon. He's already got that under control. He needs to have his hands in the strangling, Jerusalem basically to try and prevent them from calling on the name of the Lord.
Just have
Here's a
headquarters.
question.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say this is from Emmanuel Rodriguez Gonsalves. Question: do you think these drone events are the beginning of the alien deception that will explain our rapture?
I feel like it. I feel like this would just fall right in line of have so much stuff going up in the air that people are so confused or so used to it that if we're missing, you're not going to miss me because it's just another day. All of a sudden it's like, man, they told us, they warned us that the aliens are going to abduct a lot of people, and they did it. Wow. Boy, isn't the government smart? Aren't they right? Look at this. They were telling us for weeks, months, years that aliens are coming to abduct us. We've had hearings all day long about UFO sightings, and now they're here above New Jersey. Now they're here above Phoenix or wherever. Like, they just overwhelm you. And then when we're gone, it's like, well, we told you not to go to church. And they went to church anyway, and they got vaporized when they left the home. That's what happens. This ancient alien technology evaporates people. It's weird.
I think for me, I would agree. I think that when the rapture happens, because Satan doesn't know when it's going to happen and nobody knows exactly when it's going to happen, that there will be a brief window of time when people will say, that was the rapture. That was my crazy friend Shane was always going on and on about the rapture. So to answer the first question, how do you prepare? I think we start by telling people that this late date in the game, if they will not turn to the Lord right now, if you witness to them or share the gospel with them and they are non-receptive to it right now, at the very least, you share with them, hey man, we are in the last days. You kind of go over the one over the world with them on that, so that when it does happen and they miss the rapture, if they miss it, they'll at least be that's that seed that's planted, and they're like, oh, that's what my friend Shane was talking about, and then that may be able to convince them that what you said was true, and then turn around, ask to be saved, and believe on the Lord Jesus Christ for their salvation. So I don't know. That's kind of how
Yeah,
I see
I
it. But
think
I
so.
do
Yeah.
think within a couple of days of the rapture, within a day or two, that UFOs are going to litter the skies, and
Hmm.
that begs the question too. Like, if Satan is of the belief that we are instantly going to be taken up, then it's causing um the deception that we're seeing now with all the drones, UFOs, and all that kind of stuff. Why is it in the air rather than like on the ground here around us, like things appearing right in front of us on the street? And why is it all the way up in the air? So maybe
Well,
they know
because,
something about the
yeah,
rapture, about them being able to see us go up. I don't
yeah,
know. I mean,
yeah. I
I don't know.
think, like, again, back to the change blindness. Let's just say they went all hologram and that you start seeing more drones. You're not going to be able to tell which one's real or not unless you can physically touch them. Now, imagine the next stage is showing images of buildings being leveled or whatever, like small homes, whatever it is, just little pockets here and there, having people disappearing or whatever, and saying it's the aliens that are actually doing this. You only need to show a few nights a week, hey, this family's missing. And then you just go take them out during the day or at night as an army or as the FBI or whatever, raid their home, take them out, and then the next day show footage of that area. Yeah, in the middle of the night, this couple disappeared. It was so weird. They got vaporized, whatever it is. Do that a few times, show the holograms of people going into the air, maybe pockets of hundreds or whatever it is, and it's holograms of people going up. You do that enough times to people, they're going to start believing it. And then all of a sudden you get massive waves. You're going to cause panic in people that they're not going to want to go outside anymore because you just saw thousands, if not millions of people. And maybe we're over exaggerating it because it happened so fast. We just assume that people care about us when we're gone. Like the Edomites, the Ammonites, the Moabites, the second Israel got carried away to Babylon, they went into their homes and raided all their homes. And that's why a judgment went on Edom Ammon and Moab was because they were skipping for joy when Israel was being carried away. And if they fled to Edom, they would actually capture the Israelites, breaking the brotherhood, and they would take them to Babylon and trade them in for a pair of shoes or a prostitute or whatever. And they were thinking that they were doing something cool. And then when they got back, they would raid their homes in Israel, saying, this is a great thing. They deserve what they got. And God's like, how dare you say that you didn't even fear coming against my people? You broke the brotherhood. You're done. The Edomites, you're done. You're toast for coming at them. And I think it could be a vacuum. Imagine all these homes that are vacant. You think somebody's going to care about me if they can get my mortgage for half price, and you can get my job, and you can all of a sudden get my car? Payments are next to nothing. You think people are going to complain and go, nope, I can't take that home. I don't care if there's no payments for a year on your home, a brand new car, whatever it is. I'm just going to look for my friend Shane. No, they're going to take the job, the groceries, the car, everything, and they're going to move right into my house and carry on with my YouTube channel, maybe.
Yeah. Hunger is a very powerful motivator, and I think hunger is going to be when you read about the rider and the black horse, the rider on the pale horse, and the death and destruction that's going to happen, and why so many people are going to take the mark of the beast. I think the first third of the people will take it because they want that advantage over everybody else. I mean, if this thing is going to offer you, you take the mark, you automatically have this 400, IQ, because you got this chip in your head now.
And you're rich
Um,
overnight.
yeah. I mean, let's say today that they came out with some type of a mark type of technology. Anybody that volunteers to try this, we will put $100 million in your account, or $100,000 in your account, or $10,000 in your account.
Man, I'm tempted right
How
now. I'm
many
like,
people?
whoa.
How many people would jump on that in a heartbeat without any other thing? I mean, they would do that in a heartbeat.
Yep.
Now, add in all the confusion, the fear of people disappearing, and all the chaos that's going to erupt from the U.S. collapsing economically, and that domino effect that's going to happen around the world, because all the other countries right now are still orbiting in the Pax Americana orbit of the reserve currency and everything else, trade, economics. I think that it's going to be the majority of people that are going to sign up for the mark. Now, in Revelation 7, John is shown the martyrs or in front of the throne, holding the palm branches, and he said he basically couldn't count them. Like they just was too great of a number of all tribes, tongues, nations.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly thereafter, you see that he is heard. He hears the number of this army that's coming, as one of the judgments is 200 million. So if he can give the number 200 million, or he's given the number 200 million, yet he is not given a number for the total number of tribulation saints that lose their head. It seems to me that there's quite a bit that do choose not to, but overwhelmingly, I think the majority of the world population is going to sign up for the mark. And this deception we're seeing right now, as somebody alluded to earlier in the chat about, maybe this is the kind of in the Hegelian dialectic fashion of the government gaslighting us so that we demand disclosure, and that then the government comes out and says, yep, they're really aliens. And then, so what does that do to the church? And the church is like, wait a minute, the aliens are really fallen angels. And now you've got this huge narrative of, and we're going to be drowned out. And it could be, let's just say that this keeps going on for years and years. It could get to the point where words like fallen angels are censored on, it automatically gets you deplatformed from YouTube or Rumble or whatever. And it could be flipped on that kind of script as well. So I do think that there's precedence for that. And I was going to ask you too, or I saw in the chat as well, are there any drones, and has there been any drone sightings in Canada, or is it too cold?
It's too cold. It's too
Not.
Our technology that we have in Canada is beyond Nephilim or anything like that. We just have cold. They don't like the cold. It's crazy.
Maple syrup.
Maple
and
syrup. We
hockey.
just pour it on their gears and they just crash. It's crazy, man. We outrun them with our dog sleds and all this stuff. As far as I am aware, it's hard to tell them apart if they were, unless they're like the size of SUV. But we're not allowed to fly drones. They indoctrinated us with that, where you have to have a license to fly a drone in the city. You have to have a license. But I guess in the US, you're allowed to fly drones that are like the size of SUVs and nobody blinks. It's weird. Not so in Canada. It's illegal
Yeah.
to just go downtown and fly a drone. You'll get a fine for it.
Wow. I didn't know that. I'm
Yeah.
almost scared to go to. I got invited to come to Canada for some prophecy conference, and I'm like, this is right when a lot of the. I don't know. I don't think it's happened yet, but when I got asked, it was like a year or two ago, year
Yeah.
and a half ago, and I don't even think I responded. I was like, I don't think I'm going to go up to Canada.
Oh man, it's
Too
so safe here.
authoritarian.
You can no, that's in the East Coast. They get crazy there. No, no, no. Like I was in Phoenix. When I went to Phoenix, I'm like, oh man, it's good to see you guys are normal. You're like us. I felt like Phoenix was more like Calgary, except
Hmm.
50 times hotter in Phoenix than us. But I was like, I felt right at home in Phoenix. I'm like, oh, I thought you Americans were all crazy, carrying guns with you, pointing at everybody in traffic stops. I was like a little nervous, right? I'm like, I'm unarmed. I'm unarmed, guys. Going through the coffee shop at Starbucks. I'm like, guys, I'm a Canadian. I'm unarmed. I'm not packing heat. Don't shoot me. Don't shoot me, please. But no, it's like you'd be in Calgary. It's fine. Like I don't even know. Like we're so laid back. Like I'm telling you, you'd be treated like royalty if you came here. And if you did come, I'll set it up. I'll set up an event. We'll call it the Rev 310 Black Swan event or whatever, of a lifetime. Whatever. We'll come up with a name. I'll have the place all set up. Whatever. I'll organize it.
You set it up, I'll come.
Okay. Done. You heard it here, folks. You heard it here. That'd be
I'm going to
fun.
drag Lee Brainerd with me because he's almost in Canada anyways. He's up in North Dakota. He's
Awesome.
basically Canada.
Yeah,
My
awesome.
mom is basically Canada. She's in Idaho, northern
Oh,
Idaho.
wow.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and I had Lee on this show, so that was pretty good. But any final thoughts? I got to take off. I
yeah, me
appreciate you
too.
on here. Thank you for your time. Man, it's been over 2 hours. It went by just like that. Any final thoughts, bro?
Yeah, man. Things are only. I keep saying this over and over, but things are only going to continue to pick up steam and get weirder and weirder. So stay rooted in Scripture. If something that you're watching in the news seems to contradict the biblical narrative, I would hold the with very, very loose hands, or does not hold it at all, and stick with what the Bible says, because ultimately we know the Bible is going to come true. So um, yes, stay informed, keep your head on a swivel. We live in dangerous times. It's always good to know your surroundings, to know what the slant is or the bias is from information you're receiving. It double, triple check something before you post it online, to make sure it's actually what it says. It is what it is. Stay rooted in Scripture. I encourage new believers, if there's any new believers in the chat room here, to get a book, Learn the Bible in 24 Hours by Chuck Missler. It's the book that lit a fire under me back in 2009, and still going. And it's one of those books that will help you understand the entirety of the Bible, so that when you're reading Habakkuk or you're reading Obadiah or some of these other books, that you already go into it knowing kind of the background of what's the story, what's he trying to say. And this is coming from a guy like Chuck Missler, who is always going to look at everything and then some. So stay rooted in Scripture, stay prayed up. Keep praying for the Watchman community, for us, for each other. I'm sure there's everybody out in the chat room has health problems, emotional problems, relationship problems, family problems. We all have a increasingly growing number of problems. We just need to keep lifting each other up in prayer, and then just be bold. You only get this one life to live, and I wrote an article called "The Art of Almost Living," And basically, so many people just coast through life, not really thinking about investing in the eternal things. And this life will end all too shortly, and it's only what we've done for the Lord that will matter in the long run for all eternity. So that's all I have. I'll be on tomorrow, lunchtime, noonish. I don't know. I guess that's what, 11 for you in the morning. And then,
Yeah, you're an hour ahead of me, I believe, from Mountain
yeah,
Standard Time.
I just finished going through the book of Revelation on my channel. So 24 videos. I put the video up on, it's got its own playlist. I've got links in the show notes for, I've got all the slides on PDF and then all the notes that I use on PDF on the website. So it's all linked to that. So you can just go there to the website. It takes you all to the show notes, the slides, and then takes you to the playlist. So if anybody's interested in going through Revelation, that's what we've been doing since September. So I'll probably, if we're still here, Lord willing, I'll do a short book like Jude in January, and then
Yeah,
probably
I
move
think
into
so.
something like Ephesians. I want to do Ephesians really bad. Definitely, those are the next
We
two books
should
I'm looking at.
we should do like a book study together next year sometime, like in Romans or a smaller
Oh yeah,
one or something if you ever want. That'd be fun.
yeah, that'd be
If
great.
if you run out of content.
I would like to do Romans. I really want to do more. I also want to do a dispensational study through the Bible, and
Mm.
then I also want to do a kind of a mini study on the life of Joseph.
Oh
And
yeah.
I find Joseph, he's probably one of my favorite persons in all of the Old Testament. I just find his whole story very fascinating, and
Yep.
even the prophetic implications of the the dreams that he had, and just I don't know. Anyways, I don't want to. I know you
Yeah.
got to go, but hey,
Yeah.
thanks
No,
everybody
no,
for
for sure.
coming on tonight.
Yeah. Love Joseph. Thank you, Pete, for being on here. Appreciate it. Go check out Pete's channel. Every Monday, I believe you go on at around noon, right? Every Monday. Is that the idea, basically?
Yeah, yeah. I try unless it's during the school year when the kids are out and stuff. I will generally move that to like later in the night. But
Okay. Cool.
yeah,
All
most
right. Well,
part.
thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for watching the show tonight. Really appreciate you guys. Make sure you stick around, subscribe, share the video. Go check out Pete Garcia's channel. And there's his daughter, and she's probably also going to take over his channel one day in the future if we're still here.
Yep.
All right. Awesome.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye for now.
Black Swan Revelations here on YouTube brought you today's mind-bending journey. Dive into the discussion, your comments, questions, prayer requests, and powerful testimonies of Jesus' love are what fuel this community. Did today's episode hit home? Smash that like button. New here? Subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a live stream or a video upload. Thanks for being part of today's adventure. Catch you in the next video, or maybe even in the clouds. Stay curious, stay blessed.